Welcome, everyone, to our Packers News post NFL Draft Day 1 live stream, virtually alongside Ryan Wood. I am Olivia Reiner. Ryan, we have a whole lot to discuss, especially about the Packers' first overall pick in this draft. Before I get to that, I want to remind you that you can be a part of our conversation. Head on over to our Packers News Facebook page chat, and I will take a look at some of your questions, your thoughts, your comments, whatever you're feeling. Leave it in the chat. I will get to some of those later, and Ryan and I will have a discussion and incorporate that in our conversation. First, everybody, why don't we talk about who the Packers took with their first pick of the draft? I'll pull this graphic up. The Packers traded up from number 30 to select quarterback Jordan Love at number 26. What a pick. You can see some of his stats there. Ryan, the correlations are interesting, certainly. In 2005, Brett Favre was 36 years old when Aaron Rodgers was drafted. Now, Aaron Rodgers is 36 when the Packers have drafted Love. We just got off of a conference call with general manager Brian Gutekunst. He said that he has not spoken yet to Aaron Rodgers. How much sense does this timing make for the Packers to draft, presumably, their quarterback of the future?
I mean, one of two things happened tonight. Either Brian Gutekunst made a decision that's going to align the Packers for contention after Aaron Rodgers, which has been a huge question mark for years, obviously. Who's next? Or they wasted a first-round pick and a fourth-round pick for that in what the remaining window for Aaron Rodgers. I mean, those are the stakes. So they couldn't be bigger. They're huge stakes. And I tweeted it earlier in the day. To me, I'm not surprised because it all came down to me to what the internal evaluation was on Jordan Love. If this front office, if Brian Gutekunst felt like Jordan Love was a franchise caliber quarterback and they had a chance to draft him, it would have been a mistake not to. Because when a franchise caliber quarterback is the rarest, most valuable commodity in all of sports, when you have a chance to draft that type of prospect, you do it and then you figure out everything else after. But you have to be convinced. I mean, you don't trade up in the first round to number 26 overall from 30 to draft the backup. He's got to be a franchise guy. He's got to be a guy that can win you games when the quarterback you have now is no longer your quarterback. And only time will tell if that's the case, but it doesn't surprise me. Bottom line, they felt like Jordan Love has the potential to be a franchise caliber quarterback and align them for contention after Aaron Rodgers.
Franchise player, the operating word with this pick. I'll bring up these stats again. What is a franchise player? Well, let's take a look at him. He's 6'4", 224 pounds. He ran a 4.7 40 at the combine. That's what we've seen. Some of these stats up here, you can see that is what we've seen from Love in his collegiate career. 9,003 yards in total offense over his career at Utah State. That was college. We've seen that. That's what we know. What can he contribute at the NFL level? How will his skill set contribute in that way?
Well, he's really athletic. He's in the same mold. I mean, who was just the MVP? And he doesn't run, obviously, like Lamar Jackson. But that, really athletic, can make off-schedule throws, make plays when plays break down. That's what we see in the league now. And that's what Jordan Love can do. Now, there are red flags, and we just spoke with Jordan Love, and he was honest that he's got a lot to learn, and he's excited. I mean, he sounded genuinely, sincerely looking forward to the opportunity, the learning from a guy like Aaron Rodgers who's done it at the highest level. But he's got a lot to learn. I mean, the red flag, you look at his college career. His first season, he throws 6 interceptions. His second season, he throws 6 interceptions. His third season, he throws 17 interceptions. It just goes off the charts. Now, if you talk with people that watched him play last year, a lot of that, there's definitely a belief that he just wasn't – he didn't have much around him at Utah State. The offense, the talent wasn't there. But Jordan Love said himself, and Brian Gutekunst even said, he's a guy that needed to continue developing and showed that last year. Jordan Love said that he made some bad decisions. He tried to make plays when plays weren't there. That's something that a young quarterback is going to have to learn. The reality, obviously, is that he's going to have plenty of time to learn because he's not going to be the starting quarterback in 2020. He's not going to be the starting quarterback in 2021 either.
Lots of time left on that contract for Aaron Rodgers. 4 more years left on his deal. Presumably, Jordan Love has 4 years to learn underneath of Aaron Rodgers. Now, Aaron Rodgers has said multiple times that he feels like he has a few more good years left in him to play in the NFL, which is a different place that Brett Favre was in at the same time in his career. How soon can Love make an impact on the Packers?
Well, I asked Brian Gutekunst that tonight. One, do you hope and plan for Jordan Love to be the successor to Aaron Rodgers, and how far away is he to being a starting caliber quarterback in this league? And Brian Gutekunst was very careful not to place that type of pressure or expectation on Jordan Love right out of the gate, understandably so. That's huge Hall of Fame shoes to fill, of course. But the reality is that it's a failed wasted pick if he doesn't become that guy. I mean, that is the expectation. That is the pressure. So, he's going to have plenty of time, and we'll have to see once the development starts. Keep in mind, this is an atypical offseason. There's not going to be – it's going to be a virtual offseason program, just like it was a virtual draft. They're not going to be meeting in person. That's not ideal for a young quarterback coming in. Jordan Love's going to have to do everything he can to learn the offense, of course, and do those sort of things. But in terms of having hands-on teaching, that's not going to happen until many, many months from now. You're not going to get that at a rookie orientation or OTAs this year.
Certainly an uncertain future there in terms of what the offseason is going to look like. We'll see what exactly it does look like. Tonight on the call, Brian Gutekunst used the phrase multiple times that this was the way the board fell. The way that the pick happened, it was the way the board fell. However, they did trade up to get Love. However, what that says is that the price that they were willing to pay at that close of a distance was worthwhile. Packers traded number 30, and they also traded a fourth rounder. How do you evaluate the value of this trade?
I think a lot of it depends on not only, one, what does Jordan Love become? Because that at the end of the day, that's what the value is. But two, what are they able to do with the rest of their draft? They still have that second rounder, 62 overall. They still have the third rounder, and this is a really deep class of receiver. The way I saw it going into the draft, it was really bottom line. If they were able to get receivers out of this draft, it's a good draft. If they weren't, it's a bad draft. That's the one position that they could no longer afford to kick the can down the road and wait till next year. They need, regardless of quarterback, regardless of the big story tonight, they need more talent and more playmakers around Aaron Rodgers on the field because he's going to be the starting quarterback for the foreseeable future. So we'll see what they can do on Friday. We'll see if they can add to their offense playmakers. But that to me is going to be in the short term the real tell of what this draft is and how successful it was.
Speaking of Fridays, let's discuss exactly what positions might be in play on day 2, rounds 2 and 3. The Packers have 2 picks. What needs do the Packers still need to fill on the roster?
Everything. I mean, they got a quarterback tonight, and Brian Gutekunst very early on in his conference call said that it's a long-term decision. It's not a decision designed to help you out in 2020 or 2021. This is a team that was 13-3 last year on the doorstep of the Super Bowl, and they did not get better for this season tonight. So receiver, right tackle, inside linebacker, cornerback, defensive line, everything is still open in terms of needs that need to be addressed. This was a long-term decision, and with the implications of potentially having long-term, very serious, big-time value, does very little in the short term.
Let's take a look at one of those positions in particular at offensive tackle. Both Houston offensive tackle Josh Jones and Boise State offensive tackle Ezra Cleveland are still available after round 1 is completed. I picked Ezra Cleveland as my mock draft round 1 selection. He's still there. The Packers have picks number 62 and 94 tomorrow. How likely is it that they're able to find a tackle on day 2?
Although they can find a tackle, it's not going to be Ezra Cleveland. It's not going to be one of the top players left on the board. I mean, keep this in mind. Had the Packers traded back the way that I mocked them, they would have more ammunition to trade up in round 2, trade up in round 3. They use a big piece of that collateral tonight, of that leverage, to trade up in the first round. They gave up a 4th-round pick, 136 overall. So they're much more pigeonholed, and there might be some wiggle room and some flexibility, but they can't jump up 15 picks in the second round. That's just not going to happen. they're going to be picking around that 62 range. They're going to be picking around where they're at in the third round. So it's not going to be an Ezra Cleveland, but they can still find a tackle and they can still find a receiver. Let's not forget that there was a serious run on receivers in the first round tonight. Had the Packers stayed at 30 and drafted a receiver, they would have been taking the 7th player at that position in this draft. Now, it's historically deep, and it's expected to be one of the deepest classes of receiver in decades. I mean, that long. So you go 7 deep, you go 10, 12 deep at this class, you're still getting good players. They can still get a guy like that at 62. But you wonder if the fact that the top 6 at this position were off the board by the time they had a chance, you wonder if that in any way kind of played into the factor tonight with taking the quarterback and trying to regroup and get a receiver late in round 2.
Gotcha. All right. Thank you, Ryan, for some of your thoughts here. Let's move it over to some of your questions over on our Facebook page. Let's start with RJ. RJ wants to see the Packers take a defensive player in the draft. Ryan, which defensive position right now should the top priority be for the Packers?
I mean, there's a couple. Inside linebacker to me is still really undermanned, and you got Christian Kirksey, but what else do you have? You got to add to that position at some point. There's some real raw potential and talent in the mid rounds at that position. Guys that are, it's hard to envision them being able to play early in 2020, but have a lot of tools to kind of mold and craft. But a lot of those guys also went off the board. The guys that are ready to play earlier went off the board tonight. I look at it, they need offense. They need receivers. I mean, it's going to sound like a broken drum, but if they get receivers, it's a good draft. They can no longer afford to kick that can down the road.
Mm-hmm. I'm looking at all of your comments, and of course, they are mostly quarterback focused. Crystal asks, why pick a backup quarterback in the first round this year when Aaron Rodgers has 4 more years on his contract? Why not kick the can down a few more years?
Well, Brian Gutekunst made it very clear tonight that he doesn't see this as a short-term decision. It's a long-term decision. And in the long term, they don't believe that he's a backup quarterback. They believe that he's a franchise starting caliber quarterback. What that means is a guy that can win you football games at this level. That's what they believe they got in Jordan Love tonight. And if that's what they did get, it's a great pick because at some point Aaron Rodgers is going to retire. At some point he's going to stop playing at the level of Aaron Rodgers. And what happens at that point, you better be ready. They believe that they are ready tonight. Only time will really tell if they are, but they believe that they made a move that will align them to be prepared for when that time comes. So that you just got to understand from their perspective, it's not a backup quarterback. It's a franchise quarterback that they believe that they drafted tonight.
Franchise, the operating word in this pick. Thank you, Crystal, for the question. Alan asks, regarding tomorrow, day 2 of the draft, can the Packers still get wide receiver T. Higgins or wide receiver Denzel Mims at either of their picks in rounds 2 or in rounds 3? Do you believe that they might still be available by then?
Probably not, but good receivers should be. Again, this is a class that goes 12, 15 deep with good receivers. They ought to be able to get somebody at the end of round 2 that can come in and play at a productive level for them from this class. So whether it's T. Higgins or Denzel Mims, those guys are probably going to be gone. But some lesser-known names, a Michael Pittman, a Brian Edwards, those type of guys, perhaps one of them falls to the end of round 2, or someone else that I didn't name. It's a really deep class with a lot of talent.
Awesome. Well, Ryan, it's late. It's getting late. We're pushing 10 o'clock in the morning here in Central Time. It's been a lot of fun chatting with you and everybody else here in our chat tonight. The 2 of us, will be live once again tomorrow before the start of round 2. So in addition to the post day 2 wrap up that we'll typically be doing on our social media platforms, we'll also be doing a preview as well. So you can come back with some more questions, any other thoughts that you have, we can take them later. So thank you everyone so much for joining us. We really appreciate it. Have a great rest of your night.